dust, he whispered to me on the first day of his voyage. Despite the inherent dreariness of the word, I could hear his excitement in his voice, echoing in his mind. I can see from one end of the world to the other in a million shades of gray. There is no sky or ground or air, only particles, floating, falling, whirling about me. I must levitate and breathe by magical means. Zenas explored the nebulous land for some time, encountering vaporous creatures and palaces of smoke. Though he never met the prince, we concluded that he was in Ashbit, said to be the home of Malacath, where anguish, betrayal, and broken promises, like ash, filled the bitter air. What's going on, dudes? My name is MrRhexx, and we are back with some more Elder Scrolls Skyrim. We're gonna be rushing in here real quick. Hopefully we can avoid all of these random monsters. Why? Because we have a destiny to seek in the Orcish village, and that is specifically because we have to save a person. There's going to be a giant attack. A giant is going to be attacking one of the members of this tribe, and hopefully we can actually save that member, because it's going to make our entrance into this settlement and the start of the quest a lot easier. So excuse my introductions, please don't die, let's make this happen. Now, because of the difficulty that I'm playing on Masters at this point, this giant basically can defeat me in one single hit. That's rip. Okay, well, we'll see how this goes. This guy's gonna kill me. Yep. I tried to do it quick, so I went a little bit ahead of myself. But, hey guys, how you doing? My name is MrRhexx, and welcome back to Skyrim. On the last episode, we finished the Dark Light Tower. We completed the quest that had to do with the Hagravens. Jesus Christ. Alright, let's take our time this time. If the orc actually dies, then, you know, that's just fate. And we'll just do things a little bit different. I wanna try not to die again if possible. But, kind of started a little bit odd. I feel like I was thrown out of my groove. Yeah, so we did a quest that, the Repentance quest, which has a lot to do with sort of figuring out how Hagravens are made, which is interesting. It's a little bit of a ritual. We almost participated in that ritual if it wasn't for the fact that we actually wanted to stop the ritual from happening. So that was interesting. And now we're actually gonna start the Malacath quest in our mission to complete all of the different Daedric quests in Skyrim. This thing is really difficult over here. If he kills the girl, I'm just gonna back off immediately. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a little bit of a step back and let our companions actually do this for us. Let's see if I can sneak back behind the giant. The giant has a tendency to just backhand me and basically one-shot me, so even if I'm... Jesus. Even if I'm behind him, I should still be careful. There we go. So I should still be able to trigger this, hopefully.
Forgive Ugar's harsh words. She's merely doing as she's been told.
What's going on? So what's normally supposed to happen is you arrive in time to save that woman. What's her name? Uleb or something? But you save her, and basically this orc that I'm talking to, Atub, wants to invite me in because the orcs seemingly are having a lot of problems. But the woman that just died is supposed to stop me because she doesn't want, you know, non-orcs basically in here. And that's why she responds like, I'm sorry for her harsh words, which is weird that you would even say this because clearly the other orc is dead. But regardless, what's going on here?
Please, our tribe suffers and we need help. Our chief Yamar was once a strong and proud warrior. Now he is stricken, cursed. He is weak, and so our tribe is weak. The giants sense this and intrude on our territory. Now they assault our very home. Your Mars refuses help, but I sense that you may be just what we need.
All right, well, what can I do?
Your Mars has demanded we stay inside the walls. We cannot leave. I must petition Malacath for relief. This curse must be lifted. But I cannot travel to Malacath's shrine. The ritual must be done here, and I do not have the materials I need. I beg of you, can you bring me troll fat and a Daedra heart? I have no wish to depend on a stranger, but I have no choice.
Sure, I can do that. Where would I find a Daedric heart?
And a Daedra, of course.
Well, okay, thank you for that. And who is Malacath?
You do not know of Malacath?
Not even a bit.
He is the keeper of oaths, the master of curses. He is quick to anger and slow to forgive. One who wrongs Malacath is one who will endure great torment in return. He demands loyalty and strength from his orcs. We have tried to please him, but he is now angry with us, and so we suffer.
Okay.
Please hurry. We are counting on you.
So our quest now is to find a Daedric heart and troll fat. Now, I killed 2 orcs last episode, and I forgot to get their fats. So now we're in a little bit of a pickle, because by now those would have despawned. So we're going to be trying to collect these materials as I sort of explain a little bit of Malacath. You know, it's interesting because also in the last episode, we talked about the Hagravens and some of the Forsworn, and I mentioned how the Forsworn, they venerate these old spirits that are not particularly related to the 9 Divines or to any Daedra. But I didn't really have any particular examples to give because these are spirits that we just don't know who they are. Malacath is actually a good example of a spirit that is neither a Daedric Lord or a Divine. Basically just an old spirit that for whatever reason, either through its own power or because it has servants, it has remained in this world and continues to be an influence in this world. So that's a good example of how something like that can happen. And I'll go ahead and explain his story in just a bit. I just want to see if I can actually do this. Is this a location for a Daedric heart in here? So I want to take this, but first of all, I want to see if there is a troll fat in here that I can take. Sometimes you can get one to spawn here. There it is. Fantastic. Bloop. No, I failed. I'm not buying anything.
We may be rough, but we don't tolerate thieves.
Do I still have them? I do.
Around here. If that's your
Run! We'll suffer this next time we come over. Once we do the companions, I'm sure that I'll pay for what I've done here, but this is the best way to obtain it. And this video might run a little bit too long if I try and sneak it through, so let's just go ahead and do this. It's gonna save me actually a lot of time, so that's pretty nice. But yeah, we will have a lot of time also to talk about Malacath, so we'll do that in just a bit.
I will stay right here and wait for you to bring me what I need.
Here are the things you asked for.
Excellent. Now, you must come with me. You'll become a part of this. You must be present for the ritual.
Very well. It's interesting that troll fat is also used to summon Malacath back in Oblivion, so it seems like it's definitely a staple to summon this guy. Now we're gonna go and fetch the actual chieftain of this tribe, who apparently has been cursed by Malacath for some reason. Apparently these guys are having some serious giant troubles. And it's going to be up to us to try and save them from this predicament.
It is time, Ymars.
You bring an outsider here, and now insist I call on Malacath for help, when he has clearly forsaken me. You try my patience, Atub.
Doing nothing will not grant our tribe relief from this curse. We must try.
Fine. Let's get this over with.
Very well. Now we'll just go out and actually have a little bit of a conversation with this Adric
Our
spirit.
tribe has survived this long without you interfering. We'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll see about that, dude. Nice hair, by the way.
Now we begin the ritual. Great Malacath, we beseech you, aid us in our time of need.
Why are we bothering with this?
You pathetic weakling!
What's that?
Malacath has heard my pleas. He speaks to us.
You dare summon me, Yamars?
What? What is this?
You don't deserve to call yourself an orc. You're weak, you're small, and you're an embarrassment. You let giants, overrun my shrine. Bring me their leader's club as an offering, and I might release you from this curse.
So it will be. Malacath has spoken, Yamars. Your path is clear.
Very well. You, outsider, come here. I want a word. This is all your fault, you know. I'm stuck fighting a giant now, thanks to you. So you're going to help me. You're going with me, and you're going to make sure I don't have any trouble reaching that giant. Don't worry, I'll make it worth your while.
What do you want me to do?
This giant, it's not the only thing in the Fallowstone Cave. Getting to it isn't going to be easy. You're going to clear a path to the giant so I can conserve my strength. I'll make sure you're paid for it. So you meet me at Fallowstone Cave, and I'll get this over with. I could have my tribe back, and you can leave us alone.
All right, he's gonna go directly towards the cave. The cave has been marked on our map, so we should have no trouble getting there. Fortunately, there really isn't anything in between these two that I would care to do in this particular episode, so we can just go straight into it. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about the orcs, because we have found ourselves in an orc village. Or rather, an orc stronghold, as they like to be called, and I accidentally destroyed their shrine. I'm so sorry. So, these guys are called Orsimer, which means pariah folk. It comes from the word mer, which basically means folk in Elvish. You will notice that this is a name that is that actually comes from every single Elvish tribe in the game. So you have Altmer, you have Bosmer, Orsimer, what else? You have Dunmer, right? And then, of course, Aldmer, which is the original elves, and then the Kimmer or Chimmer. I still don't know how to pronounce that, which is ridiculous, but yeah. So basically, all of those names have meanings. Altmer means high folk. Mer, of course, meaning folk. Bosmer, meaning green folk. Dunmer means dark folk. Chimmer means north folk. And Orsimer means pariah folk. And the reason that they're pariah folk has a lot to do with the inception, the creation of Malacath, which we actually touched on a little bit a couple of episodes ago, and I want to sort of reiterate part of it and tell you guys parts that I haven't already told you about. But we'll do that once we actually reach the shrine. Specifically, I do want to talk a little bit about the civilization of the orcs, at least as how it is shown to us here in Skyrim. It's interesting that the chieftain is actually the only person within the orc costumes that can actually have children, that can actually reproduce. That's why you constantly here in Skyrim see the chieftains having multiple wives, because he is the only one that can actually have children. The idea, of course, being that the strongest would be the only one to reproduce, so that the children would be the strongest possible, to have the strongest genes. And then you have basically the highest elevated woman in the tribe, which was that Atub, I believe was her name, that wise woman that was sort of helping us do this quest for them. Typically in every single tribe, you would find a wise woman, and she is the one in charge of bringing in the word of Malacath. So you have sort of like the physical chieftain that rules and makes all the rules and all that stuff, and leads the community, and then the woman, which is sort of like the religious leader of the place. Now, as far as rules, it's interesting because they actually have a very specific set of rules. that every single stronghold sort of goes by, and this is called the Code of Malacath, also known as the Code of Moloch or the Moloch's Code. It depends on basically where you are, because Malacath sort of has a lot of different names, and you'll sort of realize that in a bit once we start actually talking about the story of Malacath, which is particularly interesting. But the actual codes are fairly simple. 1, do not steal. 2, do not kill. 3, do not attack without reason. So you can attack as long as you have reason. 4, fight with honor. 5, protect your tribe. And basically, anyone who breaks any of these rules has to pay the blood price, which sounds like something that you might find from Game of Thrones, but the blood price basically means that, let's say that you steal something from me, and I find out, and we decide that we have to punish you. We would actually cut you so that you would start bleeding. That's the blood price. And you would bleed basically up until I, as the offended party, says to stop. So you would bleed for as long as it satisfies me. If I want you to bleed a lot, then you would bleed a lot. If not, then a little bit, right? And that's basically what the blood price is, which is it's particularly interesting. Other than that, yeah, I mean, there really isn't much to talk about. You, of course, find a lot more about the Orsimer in Elder Scrolls Online, where you actually get to see Orsinium, and you get to see more of their costumes, more of the style of architecture that you see over there. Unfortunately, Orsinium was actually destroyed after the events of Elder Scrolls Online, so Orsinium is actually not located in High Rock anymore. It's actually located in Hammerfell. So, if we were to have an Elder Scrolls 6 in Hammerfell, we would actually get to see the Orc capital, not in High Rock, which I think is interesting because basically every single Orsinium has been in the past in High Rock, so it's a little bit of a bait and switch, I suppose. But we're going to be making our way to the cave, which is actually one of my favorite caves in the game. It's kind of special looking. It looks pretty dope. But Malacath, man. So, like I said before, Malacath used to be an Daedra. He wasn't always a Daedra. In fact, he's still not considered a Daedra, not even by other Daedric princes. In fact, they consider him to be kind of like a mistake. Or some kind of... Jesus, this woman keeps on attacking me, dude. Let me go ahead and see if I can help her out. But the basic story... I swear that hit. But alright. So the basic story comes from the Velothi, which were essentially a group of elves within the Somerset Isles. They were basically high elves. This group of elves thought that the Daedra were actually worth venerating. They saw that the Daedra were incredible. You know, they were incredibly powerful. Whenever you would pray to them, they would answer almost immediately. And they thought that it would be kind of fascinating to have a society that only venerated these entities, these creatures, these Daedras. This, however, was considered fairly, treasonous to the normal Somerset Isle people, to the normal High Elves, because they have their own gods that they venerated, their own Daedras. You have to keep in mind that the elves see themselves as direct descendants of the gods. So when we talk about Trinimac, when we talk about Ulriel, they consider themselves to be the literal child of these gods. And literally, I don't know how else to put it, but literally, the literal children of these gods. So when you have a group of elves that basically say, nah, we're not going to venerate Ulriel, instead we're just going to go ahead and venerate Daedras, it is kind of insulting. So when this group of people started venerating these guys and wanted to leave the Somerset Isles to form their own community, the one who stopped them was Trinimac. Now, Trinimac at this point was a glorious hero to the elves. Trinimac was sort of like the strongest fighter
what's inside.
Oh my god. Trinimac was sort of like the strongest hero of the elves. In fact, it was actually Trinimac who defeated Lorcan in the greatest war that this world has ever seen. So basically, when the world was in its infancy, when the gods literally walked the earth, there was this enormous war between the elves and the humans. The humans sort of siding with Lorcan, and then Auriel and Trinimac with the elves. The idea just being this religious difference between the two. The elves see themselves as descendants of the gods. The humans see themselves as creations of the gods. So the humans loved Lorcan because Lorcan gave them a place to exist, whereas the elves hate Lorcan because basically he made them not gods and transformed them into elves. The gods were forced to reproduce to basically survive, and that's where the elves came from. So they hate each other based on these ideological differences, and they fought. Trinimac won in that battle and defeated Lorcan. That's, a story that we know. So, by this point in time, Trinimac was basically a hero. He goes and actually challenges this group of elves that want to leave the Somerset Isles to venerate Daedra. Boethia comes out to defend these renegade elves, and not just defeats Trinimac in this glorious battle, but actually entirely eats Trinimac. What's interesting, what's actually kind of mean, is that Boethia didn't just curse Trinimac, but she actually digested Trinimac and pooped out. I mean, like literally like a shit, like a dong, like poop. She pooped out Trinimac. So ate Trinimac, and then out of her butt came Malacath, and that was basically the curse. And every single sort of individual, because Trinimac had come with his own army to stop these elves, these renegade elves from leaving. His entire army was also transformed alongside Malacath, and that was essentially the birth of the orcs. These Altmer were changed into the Orsimer, and that's why they're called pariah folk, the pariah people, because once they were transformed, they were completely hated by everybody, and we'll cover that in just a minute. Let's go ahead and
if there's
get
a
in.
chance this'll save me, then I'm taking it. I'll lead the way, but you'd better back me up. Let's get this over with.
Let's do this. So Trinimac, the thing about Trinimac is that, he basically challenged the renegade elves, and those elves became the Dunmer, the Dark Elves. So I'll just mention that so that it's easier for me to reference them. So there is a strong reason why the Dark Elves basically hate. Oops. Oh, I almost struck him. That's a very important reason why the Dark Elves basically hate Trinimac and Malacath. The Nords hate Malacath because of this long battle between Malacath and the Nords, which we'll cover in just a bit. And then the elves basically hate Malacath because he's basically this ugly sort of like cursed transformation. It's like the idea that he is this part of divinity that was corrupted and destroyed, and they hate him because of that, though that's a little bit debatable. Some people, specifically orcs in this game, I'm not talking about real life people, but some orcs in the world of Elder Scrolls actually believe that Trinimac is still alive somewhere, and that Malacath is just simply taking the position of Trinimac and is fooling everyone into believing that he's Trinimac. And that's why Auriel... That's why they believe that Auriel hates Malacath, because he is not Trinimac, but just some kind of Daedric monster. Which is probably not true. Let me see if I can actually deal with this guy. Once again, just one single hit, and I die, so... Gotta focus a little bit. I really don't want to mess around with this guy. Also, I'm collecting every single gem that I collect. I think I might have mentioned this before, so that when I actually have my own house, my Hearthfire house, I can just drop them all in this treasury room and create something really cool. Alright, let's continue. Let's go ahead and quick save. I'm gonna be constantly quick saving here because these giants are no joke, dude. Without my companions, Jesus. I do not know what I would do.
Never should have come here.
It's funny that if you actually come to this cave whilst not in this quest, Like, if you just casually stumble upon this place, you don't actually get to see any giants. It's only trolls and bears, which is interesting.
Well, must have run off.
Let's go ahead and get some pelts. How am I doing in... Okay, carry away, I'm doing pretty good. It's also interesting that this entrance that we're about to go into, if you're not in the middle of this quest, this place is actually... This wall is actually blocked, and you cannot go any further, so there's no way that you'll find yourself here unless you're actually doing the quest. Which makes sense.
What's the hurry?
It's kind of cool that we're actually going so far to the east that we're basically in Morrowind at this point. Basically, anything like on the other side of this mountain range is basically Morrowind, so that's where we are. Go ahead and... I've been quick saving too much, though. Are you... here? Orc shifted. He's a coward, dude. Just trying to run away from his duty. Go, bro.
Don't make a mess of this. Until next time.
Alright, let's see if this works.
Huh?
Nice. Okay. And we'll just follow him for a bit. It's kind of a nice place. You can see some leftover troll skulls in here. It's like some kind of organ of sorts. Clearly this place used to be some kind of mammoth sort of feeding ground or something. Because it's not just huge, but it's just constantly just filled with these corpses.
All right. I'll go kill this giant. Unless, of course, you'd like to make some extra gold.
Hey, I'm not against some extra gold. What do you mean?
I'm tired. I haven't slept well in weeks. You kill the giant. Bring me the hammer. We go back to Lagershbur. I tell everyone I did it. You keep your mouth shut, and I pay you. Handsomely.
Okay, I mean, I'm trying to save a lot of money, so I'll do it.
Good. I'll be waiting right here.
This, I don't think it even makes the battle harder necessarily. Like, you would think that the battle would be easier if I went with the chieftain, but I'm pretty sure he is scripted to die in a single hit. I could be wrong, though.
I've got a bad feeling about it.
I have a pretty bad feeling about this, too, because this guy is a struggle. So what I want to start doing, by the way, is, because I told you guys before last episode, I actually wanted to increase my alteration levels. So I want to start doing this, because if I don't, I might not actually survive any of these hits. I know that I won't survive them anyways, but just because. Oh, you know what I could do? Ooh. I could do, like, a conjuration battle. Let me just go ahead and put my bow here. Let's do this. Let's wait until he destroys my Trinimac. Then I'll summon another one and get my bow. I don't think the bow's really gonna do much, but I have like no levels on it. Okay, this is not working. I might have to use my blades. Alright, let's go. Where is it? Oh, I haven't set up my Dawnbreaker. 2 favorites. So let's do this and that. Alright, let's try some stuff out, dudes. No. See, he just turns. Oh no, why is he fighting? I guess he is really not scripted to die in one hit. That's interesting. Okay, sounds good. Giant defeated, we get Shrugroll's Warhammer, which is basically what we were here for. I don't need that. I can get a Giant's Toe. I don't mind that.
Excellent. You have a true fighting spirit. Did that better than I could have. Of course, I can't let you leave here alive.
Oh no.
Wouldn't want anyone finding out.
Oh, you backstabber. Unbelievable. Oh, this guy's tanky, dude. I take it back. This guy's pretty tanky. Alright. Let's just keep backing up a little bit, prevent him from attacking me. It seems like he's been slowed by the frost spell, so he can't really walk towards me. very effectively, which is great. He's taking like no damage though, like absolutely no damage. Have to do some power attacks here and there. Jesus Christ, who is this guy? He just has like orcish armor. It's like he's not even supposed to be this strong. I always thought that it was odd, the whole behavior with orcs in their villages. The fact that, oh, I guess I haven't mentioned this. So, if you want to become the chieftain of your tribe, if you're an orc, you can only do that by killing the previous chieftain. But that system, I always thought it was kind of silly.
Mars was a fool, always trying to scheme his way out of responsibility. But you took care of him and the giants. 2 problems solved at once. Now, take Shagrel's hammer back to Larnishburg, and we'll see about whipping the rest of them into shape.
Will do, will do. There's nothing really that I would take from him. It's just orcish armor, man. I don't know how he was so tanky. That was a little bit ridiculous. Let's get some cheese in here. I'm a personally big fan of cheese. You can see that there was indeed a massacre. So this used to be orcish grounds, I suppose. You can see a lot of orcs in here that were just massacred when the orcs lost this territory to the giants. Just completely destroyed, and just in front of the shrine, which is crazy. The giants were eating them too. It's no wonder that Malacath was pretty upset. You can see, I guess I could show you guys how to get a hammer. You can actually, you might not know, you can actually wield this giant hammer here. You can actually wield it as your character. It's a little bit of a glitch and requires a little bit of a process, but I'll see if I can maybe show you guys one of these episodes. Very nice. And here we have the statue of Malacath. Very, very different from his presentation as Trinimac. You can actually see the statues to Trinimac in Elder Scrolls Online, and he basically looks like a god. Like he was like this Adric, glorious divine knight. Like he looks like a paladin, like a crusader of holy light, which is crazy. It is interesting too that Malacath specifically, his... You know... Are you okay? It's like she's tired or something. Malacath, he's interesting because he is portrayed as this, almost like a deity of war. Like, he looks badass. He, it's like always sort of considered, like, look at his statue, he's like fighting something, right? But the reality is that he is actually one of, if not the actual weakest, in quotes, Daedric lords. Like, he's considered to be very, very weak, at least by Dark Elf standards. It's interesting because Dark Elves, like I mentioned before when I was telling the story of Trinimac, Dark Elves are the one civilization that are basically all about interacting with the Daedras, whether it is making them as part of their customs, to actually literally venerating them, making shrines for them, interacting with them in all manners of shapes. Like, they are the one civilization that really likes dealing with them. But even them, even the Dark Elves, hate Malacath. They actually consider him part of what they call the House of Troubles, which is this group of 4 Daedras that they consider to be completely off grounds when it comes to venerating Daedra. Like, they are the actual only Daedras that they just do not venerate. In that house, you would find Malacath, of course. You would find Shoggorath, Molag Bal, and Merum's Dagon. Now, Merum's Dagon, the Daedric Lord of Destruction. Molag Bal, Daedric Lord of Rape. It's a fun fact, they don't actually consider Molag Bal to be anything but the Daedric Lord of Rape. Like, that's all that they care about. Because, like, we basically know that he is this god of enslavement and all these different things, but they just consider him to be rape, which is kind of weird, but whatever. And then Shoggorath, which would be the Daedric Lord of Madness. It's interesting, and the reason that I'm bringing this up is because Malacath doesn't actually have a sphere of influence. You know, we here know him as the Daedric Lord of the Spurned, of the Ostracized, of, you know, the Keeper of the Sworn Oath, as the Daedric Lord of the Oath, or whatever it is that the Orcish lady sort of mentioned. And of course, he's the Daedric Lord of the Bloody Curse. But that's not how the Dark Elves actually see him. They don't see him as having any sphere at all. And of course, he technically doesn't, because he is not a Daedric Lord, right? Like, Daedras are supposed to be representations of this grander sort of cosmos, of this grander being. And that's why each Daedra represents a very specific focus. You have the Daedric Lord of Destruction. You have the Daedric Lord of Madness. You have the Daedric Lord of everything. Like, every single Daedra has a thing. It's interesting, too, that 2 episodes ago, I brought it up with Meridia. Meridia doesn't actually have a sphere of influence. We know that she is sort of like, she represents light. She represents the destruction of the undead, sort of like this attacks on necromancy. Like, these are things that she does, but she is not the Daedric Lord of Light. Like, that's not how, that's not what she is. That's not what she represents. All that stuff about light and attacking necromancers, that's just what she does. You know, but she doesn't actually represent that, and that's because she's an Aedra. She's not a Daedra. Basically, Malacath has that same sort of stigma, that same thing. He doesn't have anything, which makes him fairly weak. The only reason that he has any power whatsoever is because of his people. Basically, he has this group of orcs that just venerate him, and them venerating Malacath gives him power. And that's all he has, which actually makes him extremely weak. Now, what's interesting about all of this, too, when you consider it, is that you look at his Daedric artifact, Volendrong, right? And then you look at Periati's Daedric artifact, which is the Spellbreaker Shield. Both of these artifacts, and obviously I don't have Volendrong because I haven't done the quest yet. I'm in the middle of it. Oh, I actually dropped the shield on my house. But I was looking for it. But anyways, it's interesting because we know that Periati is considered to be one, if not the weakest Daedric Lord as well. It's funny to think that these 2 Daedric Lords seem to have artifacts that were actually not made by them. Isn't that interesting? Because Spellbreaker was made by the Dwemer of the Rorquin clan. Volendrong was also a Dwemer artifact. It was made by Dwemer. So it's interesting that the 2 weakest Daedric Lords seemingly are weak enough that they do not have Daedric artifacts made by them, which I thought was kind of interesting. Yeah, we can talk a little bit more about him. There's something else that I want to show you, but it's probably time that we sort of move back. There's... Oh, gotta loot the chest, man. Can't forget the chest. There's a very strong relationship between Malacath and the Nords that I do want to cover a little bit. Oh, it is actually the Dark Elves who, because there's a lot of books basically that when they talk about the story of Trinimac being turned into Malacath, most of these stories are kind of kind to the Aedric creature. They basically say that Boethia, you know, sort of cursed him. Like, oh, Boethia turned him into Malacath. Oh, Boethia cursed him, blah, 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 blah. It is actually the Dark Elves that are the ones that sort of promoted the idea that Malacath is the poop of Boethia that came from Trinimac, which is interesting. Like, the Dark Elves really don't like this guy. They really don't. But they consider him like wholly evil, like way too evil to be interacted with. Mostly because he's just extremely he's ostracized, right? Like, he's the Daedric Lord of the ostracized. Everyone hates him. He's the pariah god. So in return, he basically hates anyone, and he's considered to be extremely vengeful. And it makes sense, right? Like, he of course would want to defeat every single Daedra, because that's what he always wanted to do. He was a warrior. He was the warrior god of the elves. In fact, there is he has an artifact weapon. I don't know if it's an artifact really, but the weapon that he actually wields is a maul, and it is not Volendrong. Like, if Malacath went to war like his literal avatar, went to war, he wouldn't be using Volendrung. He would use his actual weapon, the weapon that he allegedly sort of used all the way back in the day, and that is, I believe its name is Scourge. And it's interesting because it is an anti-Daedric weapon. Its ability is that it has the, it banishes Daedra, and it kills Daedra. It's like a Daedra killing machine. And that's one of the reasons why Daedras don't actually invite him to any gathering of Daedras. Like whenever there is like a summoning, whenever everyone's getting together to discuss something, Malacath is never invited. I mean, one, because they don't consider him a Daedric lord in the first place. Two, because Malacath hates everybody. But also three, because Malacath has some serious anti-Daedric powers. And it's very likely that the other Daedras actually fear that. Which I thought was kind of interesting. The reason that I'm leaving the cave manually is because you're not allowed to teleport from inside, which is kind of silly, but whatever. Let's go ahead and deliver this quest. Viper asked me here on the last episode, in your opinion, do you think that the Aldmeri Dominion will continually become a more powerful empire, or do you think that their power and influence will worsen over time? I think that they will just become stronger and stronger. I think that when it comes to the overall plot of Elder Scrolls, I think that they're going to be sort of like the villain. Like, if there's ever a moment where, like, oh snap, someone summons the last boss, like, it's going to be the Aldmeri Dominion. I'm pretty sure they're just going to get worse and worse, or rather, they're going to become more and more powerful. Why? Because what they want, and I already explained this before, like, the humans and the elves have this entire opposite mantra. They believe in completely different things. What the elves actually want, like, literally, like, this is what every single elf, when it comes to religious, like, wishes, want, is to go back to their positions as gods. That's it. That's what they want. The humans want to stay here and live. Elves, they want to become gods. And that will always lead to problems, right? It doesn't matter. I mean, look at the Dwemer, right? Like, they basically wanted to become gods. And now look at them, right? Like, that's basically what's going to happen, probably. Let's go ahead and finish the quest.
We won't kill you, Outlander. Malacath blesses this land for the orcs, and the orcs alone.
I have returned with Shagrul's hammer.
But what of your Mars? I see. He did not survive. He died well.
Oh, that's kind of awkward, dude. He asked me to kill the giant, and then he attacked me.
What? Why would he do such a thing?
Yamars was a coward and a weakling. His deceitful ways have cost you all greatly.
So he has been punished. And what of us? What fate shall we suffer?
You'll have to prove yourselves, but I'm willing to give you a chance. Gullerzo's in charge now. Let's hope he's a better chief. You place that hammer on the shrine. You're the only one who's proven worthy in all of this.
Malacath blesses this land for the orcs, and the orcs alone.
All right, right on. Let's do it.
Malacath blesses this land for the orcs, and the
Boom.
orcs alone.
There you go. You put the hammer back into the shrine, and it transforms into Volendrung, what we know to be, it seems to be Daedric made, but it's actually known to be a Dwemer artifact made by the Dwemer. It was actually this hammer, I told the story before, this hammer was thrown into the air by the Dwemer clan, and then it landed on Hammerfell, and that's why Hammerfell is called Hammerfell.
I will do my best to lead the tribe, but I don't
really want to talk too much about it because I already mentioned it, and we're kind of running out of time, so there you go, guys. We have Volendrung. Absorbs 50 points of stamina. It's not a particularly strong weapon, and clearly we're not going to use it because we're doing dual wielding, but it is done. Now, what I wanted to show you guys actually is in Whiterun, because I want to talk a little bit more about Malacath. Now that I have the chance to actually talk about Malacath, I don't want to move on before I sort of finish this. I want to cover this little thing. But before we do that, Dairy Dragon asked me, so Rex, can you explain about dragons? And are they the most powerful creatures besides gods in the Elder Scrolls universe? I don't think so. The problem with dragons is like, yeah, they're very physically imposing, and yeah, they have like the Thume, which is pretty good, but I mean, humans, to be fair, can also learn the Thume, or rather the Nords. The problem with the dragons, and the reason why they're not particularly that strong in the grand scheme of things, I mean, hell, like, they're extinct, right? Their problem was always the fact that they couldn't reproduce. Like, dragons cannot lay eggs. There's not a single dragon egg in existence. It's because they just can't. And the way they go about basically existing in spite of that is the fact that when you kill a dragon, when a dragon dies, their soul actually stays on Mundus. Like, they don't actually go all the way up to heaven or whatever. They basically stay here, and then Alduin can just come back and revive them. So the thing is that they have this very close connection with Alduin, and they have to, because Alduin is basically like the one form of reincarnation. So without Alduin, they're actually very, very weak. So yeah, if you were to ask me, like, as a military civilization, if you have Alduin in that group, yeah, like, dragons would be very, very powerful, but without Alduin, they're actually really not that strong. Especially because they are not particularly well versed in magic outside of Thumes. And magic in the world of Elder Scrolls is just so powerful. So no, I don't think they're really that powerful when you compare them to, like, other civilizations, really. Alright, I don't think I can make this guy quiet, but I want to show you this real quick. There's probably a better location that I can show you this. Let's go to Windhelm. But what I wanted to talk about was that the orcs actually have a very strong connection with Skyrim of the first era. That is because, yeah, I mentioned before that the Trinimac and his people were turned into the orcs and into Malacath. So what they actually did after that is they all became nomadic. They basically left the Somerset Isles and went all around the world, and they basically spread themselves. And a very large group of them migrated to Skyrim, and that's why you see a lot of orcish strongholds in this place. It's because a lot of orcs actually went here to live in Skyrim. This is probably my favorite shrine. Look how cool this looks, man. Let me just sort of remove this so that I can just do this. Look at this. So good. There are actually a lot of battles between, like, the Nords and the orcs when the orcs first made their way here. In fact, you might not know it, but the Nords actually venerate Malacath as one of their deities. You don't get to see much of that anymore because we have the 9 divines now. Basically, the religion of the old Nords was taken over by the 9 divines religion. So everything that was sort of like the old animalistic gods that you see a lot in, like, the ancient Nordic dungeons, that's basically gone. So you don't really get to know much about it. But if you do remember, when you go in those ancient Nordic dungeons, there are these murals on the walls. You might recognize them as the different animal representation of the dragon priests. So there's like this snake dragon priest, there's like an owl dragon priest, a moth dragon priest, etc., etc. Those are actually the animal gods that the old Nords used to venerate. And one of them is actually the representation of Malacath. Now, the name that the Nords had for Malacath wasn't Malacath, it was actually Orke. Now, not because this is not Orke, as you know it, one of the 9 divines. This is Orke, an entirely different dude. But that was the Nords' name for Malacath. And there's tons of stories. Like, if you read some of the books here in Skyrim, I might be able to find some of those. Let's see. Player, period, place at me. Can I find that book? Let me fix my microphone. Okay. So see that book in there is called the 5 Songs of King Wulfharth. I'm going to show you guys that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and summon it. Let me fix my microphone. Okay. The 5 Songs of King Wulfharth. So if we go to the second song, you can see there the Old Knocker. That's actually the 3rd song, my bad. The 3rd song of King Wulfharth tells of his death Orce, an enemy god, had always tried to ruin the Nords, even in Atmora, where he stole their years away. Now, this story is interesting. Of course, the old knocker Orce is Malacath. That's just the way that they used to name Malacath. This story is interesting because the Nords actually believe that they used to live as long as the elves. See, the elves can live... Normally they live up to 1,000 years, so they rarely ever make it that far because of diseases and war and all that stuff. But, I mean, provided that there is magic involved, an elf could easily live as long as 4,000 years. Like, it's crazy. And the Nords actually believe that they could do that as well. But there was this enormous war between Malacath and Shor. Shor, of course, being sort of like an avatar of Lorcan. And during this war, Malacath summoned Alduin. So the Nords basically had to fight Alduin, and Alduin used this badass shout that stole the years away from the humans. And that's why the humans no longer can live up to 1,000 years, but instead only to, 100 years. And that's basically what the Nords believe. Now, is that true? Probably not. If you actually read this book, it's just full of like allegory and metaphors, and most of what you would read here is actually kind of crazy. So it's hard to tell whether that is actually true or not. But the fact of the matter is that there is a very strong link between like old school Nordic people and Malacath, and the symbolism that the Nords used to use for Malacath was a snake. They consider him the enemy god, and they're used to represent him as a snake. So if you go into an ancient Nordic temple, you would see that the snake dragon priest murals that you would find, those are actually representations of Orce, representations of Malacath. So this statue, once you have that context, is actually pretty interesting. This is Ysmir, this is Talos, this is Shor, this is basically like all the same incarnations of Lorcan. So what you see here is essentially the Nordic battle between Shor against Malacath. Now, of course, there's multiple interpretations of this. I made a great video about Talos. I say great, I really like that video. But it's, I'll try and link it here. But it's basically the concept that, or rather the other interpretation that this could take. We know that Lorcan was also represented as a snake, so this could mean Talos destroying Lorcan and taking his place in the heavens. Because we know that basically Talos mantled Lorcan. What mantled means is it took over, like basically became Lorcan. And that's why Talos became a god. Like, it's the one way that a human can become a god by himself, by basically just becoming that one god. It's one of the ways magic works in Elder Scrolls. If you basically become another person so real, like you truly become that person, you can actually take over that person. It's like a weird concept about this game, about the world in this game, and that's basically what allegedly Talos did to become a god. So there's multiple interpretations of this. And I do want to mention that the idea that Orce Malacath is represented as a snake is not an in-game thing. This is not something that is told to us in-game. This is not something that is in a book in-game. This is completely out of game. This is basically a developer came out and told us that in the game designs, in the game notes, every single one of those murals that you find in the ancient Nordic temples, every single one of those murals was supposed to represent an ancient Nordic totem. And of course, the snake dragon priest is supposed to be Malacath, according to the developer. But again, it's not in the game, so grain of salt, right? Like, take it as you will. It's just one of those things. Just like how I showed you guys in the book with the 5 songs of King Wolfhearth, you can't really trust everything here in this game. There are many stories that are told that you would think are canon, but in reality they're not. These are just stories that the Nord people sort of passed to each other, and you're just supposed to take it for what it is. Whew, it's a lot to talk about. I hope I didn't miss anything crucial. Probably could have explained the story of Trinimac a little bit more simple, but you know, it is what it is. There's just kind of too much to really cover for this one entity, because Trinimac is actually kind of huge. In terms of like the overall big story, Trinimac getting transformed by Boethia into Malacath, transforming and cursing all of these elves into the orcs, and then he just scattered everywhere in the world. Eventually, you know, he would form cities here in Skyrim, he would form cities in High Rock. Everyone just hated the orcs, so everyone fought the orcs. So now basically they're just like this struggling race that really only exists anymore in its true form in Hammerfell. That's like their last big city, and yeah, they're just falling apart as a people, only being led by this god that honestly is extremely weak. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. My throat is actually hurting. That was pretty crazy. Spoke a lot this video. But I hope it was enjoyable. Next episode, hopefully it's going to be next Monday. I'm really happy. I've been reading the comments a lot. You guys are enjoying this a lot, and that makes me pretty happy, I guess. It's nice to read all the comments. I've been reading every single comment. So it's so nice that you guys are liking it as much as I've been enjoying making them. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next Monday. Bye-bye.